This is our Hot Tech Takes webinar. This is the 5th webinar that Jermaine and I have been doing. We're doing them on a monthly basis. This one is called SharePoint 101. It is intended to be a introductory level overview of SharePoint. And I see from the polling, about 50% of the people on the webinar are not using SharePoint at all. And then about 40% are using some files. Not too many people are advanced. So I think we've got the right audience here, Jermaine. I think folks are looking for the introductory version. We're going to be doing the 201 course, which we're going to be getting into more detail about SharePoint and some more advanced type of stuff next month in March. And so our goal here today is to give everybody a good overview. What's SharePoint? Why would somebody go use SharePoint? What kind of success people are having out of it? That sort of thing.
That's it.
Okay, so we got lots of stuff to do. Since it's our 5th webinar, Jermaine and I are going to take some risks today. We got some videos to play. We've got some live demos. And either it'll all go wonderfully right, or maybe we'll have some hiccups, but we'll roll with it and we'll see how it goes, won't we?
Yeah, I think that'll make it a little more exciting today. Yeah, a bit more interactive at least.
Awesome. And I'm seeing there's kind of an even split roughly of people that are interested in security, ease of use, collaboration, and access to files for using SharePoint. So let's get going here. So just another quick note, if you have any questions. So a lot of folks have sent in questions for us to answer as part of this webinar, which we will be doing our best to answer. If you have questions that come up throughout, please just add them to the Q&A panel. We'll go about half an hour. Usually with these webinars, we go half an hour, and then Jermaine and I will stay on and answer as many questions as come up. So we want to be as efficient as possible, give you a good half an hour of packed content, give you an overview of SharePoint, and then we'll go through and answer as many questions as we need to answer. So let's start with an overview of what is SharePoint. So there's a nice little video that we're just going to play for everybody.
Teamwork isn't about where you are, it's about being connected. And with SharePoint Online, you'll see how to create, store, and share content on the web, wherever you are. Build intranet sites and create pages, document libraries, and lists to share information across your company. Then add web parts, like text, images, and documents to format and customize your content. Showcase important visuals, news, and updates in a modern layout with communication sites, or connect all the right people for a project with team sites. Discover, follow, and search for sites, files, and people, and manage your day-to-day routine with workflows, forms, and lists and libraries. Sync and store your files in the cloud so anyone can securely work with you. And with the mobile app, catch up with group news on the go. Learn more with video courses at office.com/training and see how to connect, share and manage content, and stay informed with SharePoint Online.
All right, so you don't need to go to office.com quite yet, because we're going to give you a good overview today of what SharePoint is and what it looks like. But we thought that'd be a good starter video. Just to kind of whet your appetite. The text version of this is SharePoint's a secure place to store, organize, share, and access information from any device. And one of the first questions that we see a lot of people ask and want to know, what's the difference between SharePoint and OneDrive? Jermaine, I think you get asked this question a lot, don't you?
Yeah, and that's an easy one. OneDrive is your personal storage on your computer, and SharePoint is the cloud storage backend behind your file share or your team sites. So one's on your computer, OneDrive, SharePoint's up in the cloud. Real easy to remember that way.
Yeah, and we always, like, for me, for example, if I'm working on anything that's just for me, I'm putting it in OneDrive. It's sort of like your your version of My Documents, right?
Mhm.
Anything company related, it's going into SharePoint. So there's different ways that you can access SharePoint. You can access it through a web browser. You can access it through map drives. A lot of us are used to just kind of going and doing, files save as in Word documents, or having Windows Explorer open and just going and navigating through there. Or kind of a newer way that a lot of people are doing is they're using Teams as the front end. So there's a files tab within team sites that the back end of that is actually SharePoint. And you can link in your SharePoint and you can have it have Teams as the front end. But we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. I always think it's useful to start with the why. So why SharePoint? What's the point, right? Maybe you have a file server at the office, or you kind of traditional way of storing files, and things are kind of okay, right? So let's talk about the why. So we've talked about in previous webinars, one of our goals for our clients is to save 4 hours per week per employee this year, and put in place a productivity roadmap that's going to help optimize our staff, right? Like, all this COVID stuff has put all sorts of strain, resources, financially, various other things. And a lot of people, even before COVID, were starting to get frustrated that they're spending all this time and money, especially money on technology, and they're not getting more out of it. So part of the reason we want to do this webinar is to show people how they can get more out of the technology that they have in place. So let's talk about VPN.
Let's
Not
just
everybody
talk about getting rid of VPN.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't like VPN. In fact, I don't like VPN at all. Since we got rid of VPN as a company, it's just made my life so much better. And I can't imagine there's a whole bunch of people that love having to double click, potentially VPN being a little wonky, not always working, having some struggles, some slowness issues, being reliant on whether or not the internet connection was fast and functioning effectively at the office, and that sort of stuff. So while I kind of narrow in on the VPN side, a big part of this, Jermaine, is also about allowing people to work remotely more effectively, right?
Yeah. Connectivity is one of the largest things we see as an access issue for people working from anywhere outside of the office. And if you're going to save some time during the week, that's a great place to start.
Yeah, so we can get rid of that little step of connecting through VPN, and we can get rid of the issues that sometimes pop up around VPN. So we save a few minutes, or maybe for some people even an hour or two a week that way. Mm-hmm. I think the next thing we're hearing, Jermaine, I know you're hearing this kind of across the board. It's hard to find files. It's hard to find stuff, right?
Yeah, that one's definitely a challenge. Especially when it comes to how long you've been running with an organization. So, maybe if your organization is 2 or 3 years old, it's easy to find files because they're not far off. But when you've been around in business like us for 20 plus years, it becomes a challenge as to, well, when was that created? Where is it? And how can I find it? So that's a big challenge that I see coming up with several of our clients.
Yeah, they're asking us questions like, people are becoming more and more conscious of the amount of time it takes for a member of their team to find things, looking around throughout the course of the week. It might be 5, 10, 15 minutes here, there, multiple times over the week. And that searching is just, it's wasting time, right? It's hurting productivity. So there's a bunch of neat search tools and capabilities in SharePoint that are getting people more and more excited about making the move. We were talking about it this morning. I used to not love SharePoint and the interface with SharePoint. When we first moved, I didn't like it. It has come forward leaps and bounds. How easy it is to find stuff now in there is great. I love it.
Yeah. It's the same as searching on Google. If you can search in Google for something, you can search in your SharePoint location for pretty much any file that existed in the past, present, or will exist in the future. So it makes good sense.
Absolutely. And the other why that we're seeing a lot is the real-time collaboration. It's time people want to move away from the days of emailing back and forth attachments. Because if you're emailing attachments, you're creating multiple versions of something, you're taking forever. We're going to do a little demo on how this works today.
Yeah. And then of course there's the search for Eldorado. Who's got the actual file that's the final version, so that we can then email it to whomever needs to use it in the future. And then you end up with the presentation, and hey, lo and behold, you're missing all of the changes that happened at the 11th hour yesterday. So that's if we took a poll right now, I'm going to venture a guess that there's a lot of people, more than 50% on the webinar, that's had that issue in the past.
Yeah, for sure. And another area that we're seeing is people are looking to increase the level of security with folks working remotely. When you're dealing with the world of VPNs and file servers and older technology like that, as soon as somebody opens up a document from your file server, you've lost control over that. It's much easier all of a sudden somebody can take that document and save it somewhere. They can put it on a home computer. They can do all sorts of things with that document, and you lose that kind of control, and you lose that ability to protect your data. So a lot of people are going to SharePoint because they want to have that increased level of security. Yeah.
And as we, belabor the point on the VPN portion of that, security is important. With VPN security, the information is transferred from point A to your office location to point B on your computer. A lot of the intercept for stealing data happens between point A and point B in that transfer aspect. And when you look at SharePoint from a secure web server perspective, you're connecting directly to that web server. There's no traffic between your computer and the actual data being transferred. So that's a big difference that needs to happen, that makes it more secure as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about what SharePoint is. And we're going to take you on a little tour about what SharePoint looks like. Jermaine, you want to talk about the 3 different types of SharePoint sites?
Yeah, so from our video, earlier, we identified 3 specific ways that SharePoint sites function. We're looking at a team site, communication site, and the last one being a hub site. And if we were to take the different sites, they're really important because it allows you to share information in a different way, more in a open landscape versus a linear progression from, if you were to look at your file share, you start at the top and you work your way down all the way to the file that you need. So you're making that linear progression. But if you look at Teams and SharePoint now, we'll show you three nice ways in which this integrates it. Just kind of opens up the ease of access that you get. So for a team site, very important, very simple. Let's say you've got a projects team or a special event that you're planning. You would create a team site and add all the people to that site, and they would be able to share their content, get follow-up updates on that project, and give everybody the information that they need. And all the files would be accessible through that team site. And you can create as many as you like. So let's say you want to create HR, you want to create finance, you want to create Christmas or holiday party planning, whatever. And then all of those sites are available for the people who have access to that team.
Yeah, it's a different way to look at it, right? You can go project to project because some people work in project teams that move around quite a bit. Some people, everybody's got different departments in the company. So setting up team sites based on departments is, as you mentioned, is a really good way of doing it. And it forces a little bit of a shift away from some of the old ways of doing things with file servers, that you're more kind of looking and thinking about setting things up how people are working,
right?
As opposed to a storage point for data.
And it looks nice.
Yeah.
So here's a great example, right? We've got a project team, product launch event. You want to add everybody in there, and somebody makes a change, adds a new file, updates a file. Everybody in the team gets notified and they're able to see what those changes are. And they can go ahead and add and update it as it goes along and keep everybody on the same page.
So just there's a question that's popped up just as we're talking about this. Is a team site different from Microsoft Teams?
That's an awesome question. The good part about that is, and we're going to cover more of that later on for sure in the 201 series, but the answer is yes and no. Because when you create it, both of them are compatible with each other, and you can have a Teams site replicated or duplicated in Microsoft Teams, the application, and vice versa. So we'll give you more information on that in the future, but the answer is yes. You can make those the same, and then the answer is no, you can keep them separate. Whew, exciting.
All right, let's talk about communication sites. Number 2.
Yeah, so communication sites are great. If we were to take we've taken a poll, we've had some questions from other clients that we've supported. Everybody's got some form of a way they exchange information with their staff and company-wide. Make new announcements, whether it's an acquisition, a new product line, somebody's birthday. Communication sites are set up as an intranet version to allow you to share information wide open. So it's not restricted like a team site for a specific project or anything. It's a public open site that allows anyone in your organization to add, edit, and make announcements. So it's more of a news feed that can be continually updated and used to broadcast information to everyone. Those are great. Well, you know how we like, and this is a great graphic. I like it because it has nice pictures and everything in it about, hey, are things happening over here? Let me throw a group meeting over there. Can you imagine this for the office holiday party in 2024 when we're all back from COVID?
All right, what do you say we watch another demo video?
Absolutely.
In SharePoint, connect with your colleagues in one place with a team or communication site. From the SharePoint homepage, select Create Site. A team site lets your team collaborate on projects, see related news, and keep others on track with a shared calendar and managed tasks. With a communication site, share news or information and engage with a large audience. We'll choose a team site. Type in a site name and see if it's available. A corresponding Microsoft 365 group is also created. Anyone can contact your entire team with this email address. Type in a site description, select a privacy setting, and select Next. Add additional site owners as needed, and any members. Select Finish. Your team site is now live.
Yeah, less than 2 minutes and you've got a brand new team site. People are available and it's got its own email address that you can contact. So it's pretty awesome.
So no reaching out, no having to worry about, okay, we got to set up a new folder structure and security permissions and mailing lists and that sort of stuff.
None of that. Absolutely none of that.
It happens all together.
Yeah. So to tie this together now, what we're going to talk a little bit about is hub sites. So if you're on a primary hub site, you want to be able to say, well, I'm a member of HR, I'm a member of Manager Portal, I'm a member of Talent Acquisition and Benefits. So now I've got a number of multiple sites. How do I aggregate in one place to ensure that I can access whichever one I need without going through that linear progression? So a hub site is great because now, as on my own hub site, I will have all of the sites that I'm a member of pinned on that site. And from that site, I can click and access any one of these. So now I'm not going through the drive down the folder line to get to the site that I need. I can just click on the icon on the main site and it brings me to that site with everything that I'm a member of and everything I have access to. So now it makes it way faster for me to get from point A to point B and only accessing the files I need.
All right. So we're going to do so Microsoft calls working on the same document at the same time co-authoring. We referred to it as real-time collaboration before. Monty, we're going to answer your question now as we do this demo. So we're going to show, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Jermaine's going to share his screen. And we're going to do a little demo together about how you can work on the same documents at the same time. Jermaine and I, if you've been on our webinars before, we talk quite a bit about when we're preparing for these webinars, usually early in the morning, we're working on the presentation. We just work on it together at the same time. We're adding slides, deleting stuff, adding videos, that sort of stuff. There's no emailing back and forth. In fact, in the last 5 months, there have been 0 presentations emailed back and forth.
Absolutely. And just to make sure that I frame the question and the answer together, I'm assuming that the question's being asked, how do you avoid working on those documents at the same time so that you don't lock your changes or you're unable to make changes and you have to save it as a new file. With that in mind, what we want to look here, and this answers a little bit of the Microsoft Sites versus Teams question as well. So Teams is the platform that we can use to access everything, right? And from there, I can have a number of different channels and groups that I'm a member of. And I've created this demo group here. I've gone ahead and I've added files to the demo group. And I've invited Brendan to the demo group so that both of us can act and see everything within this group. So now this in itself can be converted and added to a SharePoint Teams site. That would be a team site between Brendan and myself for demos, right? So that's where the hook lies into the two. It was created here and it can be accessed on the SharePoint site. So we're gonna do a quick one here. I've uploaded 2 documents. I've created a document. I'm gonna create a new Word document. All I did was click on create new Word document, live demo. I hit create, and now that document opens up. Right here, I haven't left Teams. I'm still in the Teams application. And here's the document. Now, in the document, I can go ahead and say, hey, I am working on this with Brendan today. Brendan now opens up, and you'll see in the top here, it's now said, hey, Brendan's actually on this page as well. And he's accessing and writing. So now I can see his tagline and his name in the document. So I know exactly where he is and what he's doing. And then I go ahead and just close this for now.
Wait, Jermaine, you didn't save it.
Ooh, yeah. So gone are the days where you need to hit, file, save as, not a problem. If I open that file again, everything that we have on here is in auto save mode. So I don't need to save anything anymore. The file in itself is already set up. And when we get to version 201 of this webinar, we're going to show you about all the different ways to fix an error and a mistake and what you can go back and do with something called versioning in this live active sheet. So if I close this off, we're going to try an Excel sheet too. And the reason we want to show you Excel is because Excel is just as fun. It helps you to create. When you're creating and doing work within a document, I see Brendan has removed all of the stuff we did this morning.
I don't want anybody to see all our secret notes from this morning, Jermaine.
Makes good sense. Now, again, Brendan has joined the sheet. And if you look at the sheet, you can see Brendan's being highlighted on a cell. So it tells me where he's exactly located in there and the fact that he's editing it at this moment. So to answer the question, Brendan and I can both edit this document and make changes. If I don't like what he's doing, I can remove it as the same. And it's a live change. Now, in the future, again, when we look at versioning, even though I deleted Brendan's comment, he can go back and restore the file to 10 seconds ago and get back all of the stuff I may have accidentally or intentionally deleted. In this case, intentionally. There we go. And yeah, please don't use it as a chat function. So at that point, with that in mind, and again, you can close the file at any time, even if you lose connection, it's cached here and the file will stay. And it says it's been updated about a minute ago by Brendan. by Brendan. And of course, the last time I made an update to this was 6 hours ago because I didn't save any of my changes. All right, so from here, we're gonna flip back over. That's our very short and involved demo on co-authoring, according to Microsoft.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned too the other opportunity that you can do the same thing with PowerPoint. So here's, for example, this is the presentation that we're going through right now. You can see Jermaine is logged into this presentation as well up in the right hand corner. Same sort of deal. You can have two people working on adding slides, making changes, all that sort of thing. So if we get to our co-authoring demo and say we want to change the name of the co-authoring demo, Jermaine has just gone and put co-authoring part 2 in while I'm talking about this. So let's we're going to go back to. We will go back to our presentation here.
And it raises a good issue. I mean, just recently, with every time we speak with a new prospect or client that's coming on board, these questions come forward as in, you know, our file server is 10 terabytes because we have this many copies of every single file that we've ever created to avoid losing a change somewhere. And that's something that will be no longer applicable in the future.
So one of the most common questions that we see is, how do I share files? So we wanted to do one more video just to show what the way to share files, and the purpose of this is one of the bits of those 4 hours of productivity loss is that emailing files back and forth. So here's a demo of how we can save time in terms of how people are sharing files back and forth.
In a SharePoint document library, create a new file or upload an existing file and share files with others. To create a new document, select Documents, New, and then choose the file type you want. The new file will open in your browser. Add text, images, and whatever else you'd like to it. And the new file is automatically saved to the document library. To rename the file, select the down arrow. Name it what you want. To go back to the library, select the site name, and you'll see the new file. To upload an existing file into your document library, select it from your computer and drag it into the library. To share a file, choose it, and then select Share. Add names or email addresses and a message. Then select Send. Or you can select Copy Link to create a direct link to the file. And paste the link wherever you want to share it, like in an email, chat, or document.
Again, that's like a minute 30. And you're able to access, share, create a new file, move it around.
And I think it's important to note too, that demo was showing the web-based version of accessing SharePoint. So in our demo, we showed how you can access SharePoint through Teams as the front end. That demo was showing how you can access it through the web. And there's also a SharePoint mobile app that you can do the same thing. So we've gotten bang on 1:30. We've gotten to the conclusion of our presentation, and then we wanted to spend the rest of our time today going through questions that people have put in the question pane and questions that people have provided in advance, just so we make sure that everybody gets the value that they were looking for out of our session today. There's a couple, just before we do that, I'll mention, I'm going to put up a poll for everybody. Just if you can I'm going to put up a new poll here. Give us some feedback before you leave, just in case anybody needs to leave early today. Give us some feedback on what you liked, what you didn't like, how you would rate this this session, this webinar, and we can keep it into account as we do SharePoint 201. So let's start with, holy cow, we got a whole bunch of questions. So I'd say question number one, as we encourage employees to use SharePoint, what are the best practices to ensure company data is properly backed up and in control by the company? Jermaine, do you want to take that one?
Absolutely. That's a great one. In the past, I'll give you guys a little bit of, right now, if you're on a physical server in your office, it's backed up locally on site. Then it's off-sited to somewhere else, and then a replication of that backup's happening. So there's, you know, three and four data transfer sequences that happen. When you're in SharePoint, your Microsoft 365 email, your Teams conversation, everything that you have is in one holistic hosting service in the cloud, and that's backed up one way, cloud to cloud, externally. So all of the data, even if you were to delete an entire folder or section of your SharePoint today, the backup would have happened up until 30 minutes ago. You can go back to just 30 minutes ago and restore the entire file system. You can restore an entire user's profile, anything. So it's way better as a backup because it's very granular. You can restore a single email that you accidentally deleted from your email inbox.
Awesome. So our next questions come around security. And I've seen sort of a few questions that talk about best practices for security, access, overall governance of who has access to what and how that works. And I think the biggest part of this is, like any other part of your technology, it's important that there's a process in place where there's a regular review and auditing of what groups are set up, what settings, permissions, who has access to what. There's somebody or multiple people in your company that are reviewing access, depending on the size of the organization, sometimes monthly or definitely quarterly, and looking at settings. And there's things that you can set up that take unused team sites, and you can put settings so that after say 3 months, if a team site hasn't been used, it automatically gets decommissioned. So you don't have something sitting out there. You can review who has access, who has external access, who has internal access. There's all sorts of settings that are a big part of kind of the new way of managing IT and proactively reviewing, auditing, and aligning things.
And a part of that is too, it's more efficient currently. Previously in the past, when we do that type of an audit or review, those permissions are on a file server and the like. You're granting permissions at a folder level in most cases, or a group level. With SharePoint, and that auditing process happens more often, and it happens more frequently, that there are more ways to remove access from someone even if you want to share a file with them for 1 day. And there's more configurability and monitoring around that to allow us to catch and remove things before they get stale, old, or become exposed.
Yeah, and we'll go through some of this stuff in 201. We're getting into, like, we can get into much more advanced security permissions, information protection, conditional access. If I keep going, I'll probably bore a bunch of people on the line. Maybe we could go to next. There's a bunch of questions, Jermaine, about change, and how we can manage the change around people need to get educated, how you deal with the change. Do you do it a little bit at a time, or do you kind of go the big bang? Do you want to share some of the kind of successes we've had in transitioning folks from the traditional file server to SharePoint environment?
Well, I'll tell you this. In every single case, it's on a case-by-case basis from an experience perspective. In the transition period, we found the best way to do it is to go full metal jacket and just cut off the old way and start the new way and force everyone to learn. Because when we've tried in the past, we've had a few iterations of this. We've probably done this type of a migration about 30 times now. And when we look at that, the situations where it's not very urgent and it's kind of like, oh, you could do this, and there's this whole preamble leading up to the change, people don't pay attention to it after a little while, and then you do the change and you still end up in the same place you would have ended up had you just said, okay guys, tomorrow I'm turning this off and you're going to work this way going forward. And it turns out to be the same. So the end result is, if we were to take anything from our current situation, we need something to force our entire workforce to say, oh man, I need to work on this way today and I can't go back to yesterday, so I need to apply myself. And no matter which route you take, we still end up there as the turning point for every single client. That transition day is always, there's no, hey, we turned it on and everybody did the videos previously, everybody attended the webinar or the training session, and everybody was good. The next day, it's always the same. So my only answer to that, I would say in short, is tell everybody it's coming, pick a day, and throw the keys away, and let's see what happens.
And I think the other areas that we've seen success with it is creating a test group of people to try it out in a company, especially when you have particular workflows. Jermaine's right. At some point, you need to just make that cut over. And there's tons of videos that are available that give people the training. We'll normally do a sort of ask us anything type of online meeting for folks leading up to and after a transition to SharePoint. And you have to get people to be bought into the process. And one of the other questions that we had, how do you kind of convince people to do this? Well, one way to convince them is take away their access the old way, right? That's sort of the stick way. The carrot is this idea around saving 4 hours a week, right? Nobody wants to work harder to achieve the same results. So if we can communicate to our teams and say, this is a productivity boost. If you go back to the different things that we talked about, getting rid of VPN, making it easier to find files, and boosting security. If you walk through your team, all these different things, enabling real-time collaboration, if we can show our teams that there are 4 kind of very clear, very straightforward ways that we're all going to benefit from working on something in SharePoint. So I got a question that popped up here, Jermaine, is this leveraging a cloud server or can this be done on an internal server?
It's leveraging the Microsoft cloud space. This is included. Most of this is included with your Microsoft 365 account when you set it up. It's all about having the right licensing to access it. All of it is done in the cloud. SharePoint on a server is what I would call the nightmare in Elm Street from, I would say, 1998 through to about 2007 or so. And it's one of the most challenging things you can do for yourself is to put your have a SharePoint server on a physical server in a location. Microsoft's completely doing away with that. At this point, they make it next to impossible to license it on premise. It's very expensive because there's no maintenance.
But Jermaine, as business owners, we all like to buy servers, right? Like we all like to spend $10,000 or $15,000 on servers every 4 years and continue to.
Said no business owner I've ever spoken to. I mean, unless you really like servers or you manufacture them yourselves, I don't know that anybody likes buying that physical hardware. But to tie it in and not to get off too far on the actual question is, the cloud space is more affordable currently. If you were to amortize a server over 5 years or whatever number of years you like to use a server for, the cloud service would be less expensive and more secure, easily accessible than the infrastructure for maintaining a physical server on site.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point too, that we used to kind of harp on this a little bit more, that like part of getting rid of VPN is also getting rid of servers. So we get rid of that capital investment, and people are already generally paying the Microsoft 365 licensing fee that includes SharePoint. So the ongoing cost of moving from file server to SharePoint is you remove a need for a server or two.
Yeah, it becomes more of an operational expense than a capital expenditure at the end of the day.
Yep, absolutely.
Hopefully that answered your question, William.
The other questions, are there varying levels of access and features depending on current Office 365 subscriptions?
The answer is yes. There is a small business license tier that is suited the best, has the most available perks, features, and security. That's like the mid tier, and yeah, that would be. There are different tiers that you would want realistically in our recommendation. If you want to leverage everything here and become a mobile organization that works fully capable of working efficiently, fully remote, you would want to be in that mid-level tier, and that's around the business premium level. Outside of that, there's other enterprise versions that have the whole suite of everything, and you can lock everything down to the last letter. Whereas the business premium's more within that market space for everyone. And if you're a not-for-profit, all of the Microsoft license tiers, you are able to access those tiers at, I believe it's a 75% discount for all non-profit or education organizations.
Yeah, we've been helping a lot of nonprofits move away from file servers and use that very low cost Microsoft 365 subscription. Here's another question. I work with an investment advisor who comments she always needed to re-input the full email address when sending a document. The email address would not pick up from past emails sent. She noted this may be a security issue added by her investment firm. Any comments would be appreciated.
Oh, that's a great one. That can be turned off as a security feature, or it can be available where you start typing the person's name, or as soon as you click in the address bar to send something, it gives you the top 10 people you've sent an email to recently, and you can select one of those participants. Yeah. So
yeah, I think the other point that is good to put across here is there's an inherent flexibility, and there's a push and pull in SharePoint. So the notion that you move stuff to the cloud and then it's just all set up and you don't have to worry about it anymore, that's a fallacy, right? Like it's based on advertising, and there are so many different ways that you can set things up because so many businesses have different needs and workflows and that sort of thing. Some businesses are sharing documents externally outside of their company all the time. So being able to share it easily and securely, that's important. Some businesses are never sharing documents.
Absolutely. And those ones you want to lock down, tighter than Fort Knox. Which brings me to the next one. We have another question here. Would SharePoint be a means of securely sharing confidential documents with clients? Absolutely. So Microsoft's got two things in place. One's called records management, which we'll cover later in one of our webinars at some point, maybe under security, and access to files. So when you share a file from SharePoint, you can share it to a single individual. And when you share it to that individual, you can also put an access timer on that folder, file, or the area of that information you're sharing. So as an example, I can share a file with Brendan and say, Brendan, you've got 2 days to read this file and give me feedback. He goes in 2.5 days later, he can't access the file, it's gone because I put a timer on it. Same goes for any type of secure file. When you share that, you can dictate if the person needs to be a member of a Microsoft team, part of your organization, specific email address with first name, last name, credentials. You can even have them sign to open the document by putting in their email address, password, and authenticating before, proving they're themselves before they can access the document. So it can be CIA level secure, and it can be average business, small business level secured? So the
Yeah.
answer is yes in every way.
And you can also geo restrict
Yes.
who has access. So Jermaine shares a document with me. And if he says nowhere in China, Eastern Europe, Russia, other parts of
United States of
Asia,
America, anywhere.
anywhere outside of North America, this document should not be accessed.
Yeah.
And then, so if there's ever some sort of issue and somebody's trying to access it from a foreign country or something like that, it'll be locked down and won't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the answer to that question, I believe, is yes.
Resoundingly.
All right. What do you want to, I think we could let's do one more question. I think we've covered just about anything or just about everything. One last question was the speed of office internet connections, and how do you make sure that your internet connection is fast enough so that, because obviously this is cloud-based and you're moving from in-house to cloud-based file server. How do you assess, Jermaine, whether you have a fast enough internet connection?
So I love this question. We get it every single time we talk about the cloud. If you currently work where you're accessing your current file share from outside of the office, so you're not using your local office network, you're using VPN, you're using any way to connect in, the easiest way to test this would be connect to your VPN and try to launch something from your VPN, and then connect to your browser and launch your Google email or your Yahoo email or any one of those. And try to download a file from either one, right? Download a file from Yahoo email, download a file from your VPN. And you'll see right away that the same internet connection performs way better downloading from your Yahoo email address in the browser or through whichever email address you have and your VPN. So that's stage one. Part two, you're accessing this like a remote server through a window, right? So if you're looking at your television as an example, you're viewing all the action happening in the TV space. You're sitting in your living room. There's no data being transferred from the TV to yourself. And that's one where you lose a lot of bandwidth or you lose a lot of transfer speed. So going directly to the cloud, a lot of that processing power and the caching of information to send it to you quickly through your browser is on the onus of the cloud, not your data connection, right? So you can have, I'm not saying you should have less than 25 megs down, 10 megs up as a connection for to make things run great. But if you were to compare the two on the same connection, going to the cloud would actually be faster.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like obviously the answer to a lot of these questions is it depends on your business, right? It depends how many people, depends what kind of connectivity you have, that sort of stuff. But you can see from Jermaine's answer that you have that option to work on things web browser based, or you can download it to your desktop and work on it in the traditional Word or Excel application like you would. Another note, if you're working on big kind of creative suite type of files, sometimes like AutoCAD files, that is something that needs to be evaluated in planning out the migration, right? The bigger the files, the more you need to plan it out and make sure, hey, if you've got a designer that's working on nothing but like massive creative suite files, you got to kind of think about that and say, okay, does this make sense? What's the workflow that makes sense? Because we're looking to save those 4 hours a week, and we're not looking to add to that, obviously, like the most obvious kind of statement I can make. But understanding that workflow and making sure that somebody's gone in and assessed the workflow and who's using what application and what data is going to work the best is an important part of that transition, to make sure that you get the staff buy-in and you get the benefit out of making the transition to SharePoint. Perfect.
Well, I think we're a few minutes over time, but if we've got any more, that's it. Feel free to reach out to us. Our contact info and the recording will be up on our website. Have you got
and I appreciate we got some great feedback. Anybody that hasn't filled out the poll, please fill out the poll before you leave. And thanks for joining us. 201 will be in March. And if you're on our email address or our email list, which everybody on this call should be, you'll get an email with a reminder about that March webinar on March the 17th. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.